1971, after liberation war, like since independence, because industry started growing more. Back in 1971, most of the energy consumed in Bangladesh was from renewable sources. But as the industries continued growing, more amount of energy was required. So more non-renewable sources of energy got introduced, and then ultimately the amount of energy production from non-renewable energy sources was much higher than the amount of energy production in like renewable energy sources as of today, as of 2022. Most of the energy consumption by sector in our country is obviously done by industries. So they consume a lot of electricity for producing the goods and stuff, and a lot of this energy is produced through gas. One notable thing here from the chart that the chart kind of doesn't represent as well is that in our agricultural sector, a lot of the gas resource is used because fertilizers are produced using that gas. So our agricultural sector also uses a lot of gas resources.
According to that plan, by 2041, the energy mix will look something like this. We will depend 38% on natural gas. We are increasing our energy mix towards coal. We have nuclear power plant, and we are increasingly importing more LNG, and that is like the reality of things. As Rabea was mentioning, that there is a significant energy demand that is going to go up, and if we want to meet that energy demand, we need a source of energy. But the major problem is if we are depending too much on coal power plant, it is going to have significant impact on our ecology, on the health of the communities who are living near the coal power plants. And you know, every day coal power plants release hot water, and it changes the ambient temperature that is required for the aquatic species. And so if we have more extinction of aquatic resources, it is perpetrating injustice towards the fisher folks and those who are depending on them. We need, the renewable energy sources has been, the adoption has been quite slow. It has not increased beyond 3.5%. We have been stagnating there. And I think one of the reasons for that is that, back in 2010, the transformation that has happened with the fossil fuel energy, there was participation of the private sector, and there was public-private partnerships. I think similar things need to take place with the renewable energy. We need a feed-in tariff mechanism where there is a higher tariff offered than the market rate. There is a net metering system. We do not have too much possibility of having solar power plants in the land. Acquisition of land is difficult. We have limited agricultural lands, and our Honorable Prime Minister have already said that we cannot use agricultural land for solar power plant. So we need to use the rooftops of different industries. That in our agriculture sector, we are 70% of our, we depend on the natural gas resources. And when the natural gas is exhausted, where we are going to get our fertilizers? And most of our farming systems, we have intensified it so much that we have forgotten our indigenous ways of farming that has evolved over thousands of years. So this is that knowledge we again need to bring back. We need to make it more sophisticated. We need to bring more technologies, but we need to make it 100% regenerative agriculture by 2050.
Thank you. What is the option for an energy-hungry economy like Bangladesh? We have to make a balance. We cannot let our industries stop, right? And how will the exports go on? Where will the foreign currency come from? So we must make it, but that is why we look to young people like you to come up with great ideas. In 2050, I'm not going to be there. I'm likely not going to be there. You all will be there. And there is exploration in gas, in offshore gas on the cards. It's going on because there are certain processes that you have to go through. You can't just get someone and tell them that, okay, you start drilling. About onshore gases, the state corporate BAPEX, you have heard of BAPEX, they are doing very well. They have started exploring, they have new rigs which they are using to explore onshore gas. We are positive that we will get quite a bit of gas from the Bhola gas field. And you know that there are talks ongoing to get hydroelectricity from Nepal and Bhutan. Since it's not just bilateral, it becomes multilateral because there is India in the middle, right? So we are hoping that BIMSTEC can help as an organization to speed that up.
I saw the headline, your business page, you're saying the businesses, corporates are worried about energy. Where were they for the last 20 years? Why didn't they invest in renewable? Why didn't they listen to the experts, listen to activists? We've been saying move, shift, invest. So I didn't get that pitch from your presentation. How we're going to convince this move, and what will be the processes, these arguments are being made, but how do we pitch and make sure that there is interest both in political actors and corporate actors?
How do we promote minimalist lifestyle? And how do we invest in education and transform towards a knowledge economy? Right? Both of these are very dear to my heart and things that you need to be elaborating on. The rest of the things are background information. But this is where we intervene and we change people's behavior by raising awareness, raising knowledge, and raising people's understanding of issues and willingness to take actions to deal with that. And by and large, we are now talking about younger people like yourselves rather than old people like me. We are not going to change our ways. We are stuck. But young people are not. And we have many more young people than we have old people. And so that is a big investment for us to make, you to make.
One of the professor you might be familiar with, Professor Mostaq Khan of SWAS, one of the Bangladesh's most brilliant researcher, I would say a scholar, under his accountability studies is basically showing the way current energy plan is implemented, especially the deals that is been made. There's a lot of inefficiencies, lot of overpricing and so on. Bangladesh could save $1 billion per year. Think about that. I say, okay, 50% probably a bit of exaggeration, it's a research and done. $500 million Bangladesh can save the way, if it is done more fair way, transparent way, in accountable way. Here you go, the money. We really don't need to go to the COP and shouting for the last 20 years, give us the money. We have the money in our hand.
Thank you.
Climate change adaptation in Bangladesh. As we all know, adaptation is absolutely crucial for Bangladesh, a country which is facing the very brunt of climate change. So let's take a look into the climate change adaptation. Cyclones. Sure, it's a natural calamity, but the frequencies that cyclones have been happening at and the effects of cyclones that have worsened in these recent days, it can be linked to climate change. For example, Cyclone Sitrang had broken the flood protection dam on Bhairab River, which was supposed to protect people from flooding, yet it broke. 2 Bagirhat villages have been flooded, and it's not just in Bagirhat. All over Bangladesh, all over the coastal regions, there have been numerous cases of flooding and numerous cases of problems that have been caused due to Cyclone Sitrang. Maladaptive practices in Bangladesh. What is maladaptive practices? It's adaptation practices that have failed to perform or failed to actually help Bangladesh adapt to climate change. I have written a lot of problems here, and we'll be diving into these into the next slides. First up, we have shrimp cultivation, otherwise known as the white gold of Bangladesh. This is because recently shrimp aquaculture has been boomed into a very profitable business and has turned in a lot of profits for Bangladesh. But shrimp aquaculture has been targeted as a climate change adaptation strategy, yet it has seen there have been scientific proof and scientific papers that have proven that shrimp aquaculture has been worsening salinity, has been increasing salinity in Bangladesh. Moreover, unequal access to profits means that there's corruption and income inequality in this very aquaculture practice, which means that the elites get most of the profit while the local communities get bare minimum and have to still face the brunt of the problems associated with this very aquaculture. 2/3 of its farmable land have been converted to shrimp cultivation because it has been thought that since the water salinity has already increased in this area, they might as well use shrimp aquaculture as an adaptive and income generating activity for the local communities. But what has happened is they have lost fertility of land, they have lost both crop yield and also shrimp yield because the brackish water has caused numerous diseases that have been affecting the shrimp population itself. Let's look at poldering, which has been an ineffective adaptation to flooding. Polders are embankments to protect low-lying areas from flooding and saline intrusion. This has been adapted from the Netherlands. Now, the problem is Bangladesh is an active delta, whereas Netherlands has a very different geographic situation there. Therefore, while polders might have been effective in the Netherlands, in Bangladesh, it has not been as effective. While momentarily it has stopped flooding, after about 2 decades, we have seen that rapid sedimentation around these polders have become extremely problematic. Now, there's also increasing erosion along the east coast of Bangladesh. I am from Chittagong, and I'm sure that a lot of you know that Chittagong, Cox's Bazar, and all the coastal regions are facing extreme river erosion in these recent years. These erosions can be attributed to problematic adaptive measures, such as unsustainable coastal development, coastal hardening like geobags, and planting invasive exotic species, such as the jhau trees. These fail to not only keep the river banks intact, they are actively causing more and more river erosion to happen every day. We have to understand that these adaptation practices come with a huge gender dimension. Women are affected by income inequality, unequal access to resources, and these saline intrusions are causing reproductive health problems for these women. Even after that, if they do make it to a cyclone shelter, they are subject to increasing sexual harassment and abuse in these shelters. Therefore, we should not just ensure that there are cyclone shelters, we should ensure that cyclone shelters are safe for everybody, not just for men, for women, for every gender and every community. Now, it's not just a hopeless case in Bangladesh. There have been adaptive practices that have been extremely successful in Bangladesh. Let's take a look at the adaptations that have been successful. First up, nature-based solutions. Anything that incorporates nature correctly and with indigenous knowledge have been extremely helpful in helping Bangladesh cope with climate change. Moreover, locally led adaptations, practices that take in the opinions and knowledge systems of local communities who live there have also been effective in combating climate change. We also have to ensure that there's a multi-stakeholder participation in these adaptive practices, because we cannot just take the opinion of one community. We have to ensure that organizations, policymakers, politicians, government, the local communities, scientists, every community is included in this approach so that they can provide their own knowledge and we can create an integrated adaptive practice for Bangladesh.
Thank you.
What may work in the UK, Netherlands, or the other countries may not be in Bangladesh, may not work in Bangladesh. Context is different, people is different, culture is different, our history is different. So I think there's a huge delta band that is out there that we are into implementation. I think we really need to be cognizant, mindful of the fact that we are completely operating in a very different context than Netherlands. So the poldering example that Maisha mentioned, now I don't know if I say this stuff, I don't get invited in many of these forums the next time. So what is the reason behind this increase in salinity in the land? And there are many research that is being done will attribute to this poldering, but these been touted as a big development or what adaptation measures. So I think we really need to rethink over here.
Adaptation is a learning by doing process. There is no silver bullet. Today you might have something that's effective, and tomorrow it may prove to be not effective anymore. It changes over time, okay? So there's no single solution. We have to continuously learn, look at what's happening, and then develop further from that. Today's maladaptation can become an adaptation tomorrow if we take that into account. Okay, so we must continuously learn how to do things. The second element that I would suggest we need to be thinking about, and this also relates to my comments made to the previous presenters, is that adaptation is less about doing things, shrimp or boulders. It's about people knowing things, all right? It's people's knowledge and capacity that is our adaptive factor. Okay? Loke ki jane, ki bujhe, ki pare, korte ki khomata ache tader. Okay? So we need to be investing in people's knowledge, capacities, capabilities, and ability to do things rather than building something for them.
Adaptation is natural because communities, it's about their survival and resilience. So when we talk about adaptation as a science, yes, or as a formal discourse, it's a different thing. But adaptation is very much inbuilt. And people have found solutions because they can't be waiting for us to go there and solve them. So my experience on the ground is people are the first responders, they are the first reactors, they are the first adapters, right? And way back from post-Cyclone Cedar 2008, we developed what we call Gono Gobeshona, which was people's research. And that's how I learned. In fact, that's how also Salim Bhai took up Gobeshona. Because on the ground, they had brown paper and they were telling us, see, this is where the water comes. This is what happens. This is how we are being affected. And this is the resources we have. And with this, because it's not just about embankments and polders and relief coming from them. They were also trying to deal with that. So community knowledge, indigenous knowledge is something that we have also been pushing for all these years. So that's one aspect where the rest of the world, along with us, are now, it comes up, repeatedly comes up that you have to pay attention to indigenous knowledge. I also want you to pay attention to what Salim has said, that a solution today may be maladaptive, tomorrow might be the right one. And we are in a state of flux because of climate change. When we were in the coastal areas, certain things worked. They don't work anymore. When I work with the people in Rangpur and other places, at one point one group says the dam had some benefits, now it doesn't. The embankment had some benefits, at least at that point in time, but it doesn't. So it is a continuous process, and the community-based adaptation is a continuous process.
I would definitely agree the shelters have definitely improved, and see, we are resilient, we are very resilient, and the community, what you presented about the community-based adaptations, that is definitely the way to go, and to learn more about what works. Not every solution will fit everywhere, even though we are a small country. The solution for Chittagong will not be the same as the solution for Borguna or Sylhet, different. And things we have to learn as we go. Yes, time is very short, and what we have started, we have to, make sure that the future, there is a Bangladesh, and there is a livable Bangladesh in the future. For that matter, everybody has to worry that there's a livable planet in the future. Bangladesh is part of the planet. And you have heard how we grow crops, saline soil and in saline water. We have crops now. Yeah, please. We have crops that grow. And recently, there's a lot of talk about how farmers are going back to farming in water. Very interesting. So Bangladesh is adapting.
Thank you.
The impact of
climate change is noticeable on every stakeholders from every level, but nowhere is it starker than the impacts on the people. Every year, people in rural areas have to spend almost $2 billion in mitigating the impacts by climate change. Vulnerable people are forced to sell their little belongings to move inland, only to be met with rising prices and inaccessibility. Climatic factors also pose significant risks to macroeconomics and social stability. Being an agrarian society, $5.1 billion every year is not really a loss we are ready to incur just yet. Furthermore, a reduction of 1.3% of GDP would greatly stall the developments we have been making in recent years. Even though wealthy nations around the world have pledged significant amounts to emerging economies, including the debated Copenhagen Accord, much of it has not actually been disbursed, and much of it has actually been, is yet to see the light of the day. And we come to the funding need for Bangladesh. Bangladesh's need for climate financing is comparatively more than other nations, given the already aggravating adverse impacts of it, and we have seen it in further presentations as well. One of the notable examples of this significant funding required to protect towns and villages from inundation in the form of $2.6 billion upfront and $54 million yearly.
How should Bangladesh rethink climate finance moving forward? So the stories I mentioned, I think this is one of the areas that where we can focus. The stories of grassroots people, the stories of people, those who are bearing the burden of climate change in their corporal body, that is something that we can focus. And their stories, their suffering need to be in consideration when we are designing financial instruments. Our financial instruments should not focus on the ability of the implementing agencies. Our climate financial issues, our climate products, climate finance products, and our investment mechanisms should focus on the human suffering, on the toll that they are getting, not the bureaucratic process, either it will be able to deliver it or not. Many cases, this is something happens in climate finance. The last part is the bold innovation that is need to be done. And this is where, I was also questioning myself, what do I mean by bold innovation? And if I talk about bold innovation, where does the woman that I'm talking about stands in that bold innovation? How we can support her? Probably when the state could not support her, when her society was abandoning her, there could have been a safety net, which shouldn't let her down, right? So this is where I think climate financing should come up with the existing, that there are examples in Bangladesh. I think the government did a tremendous job during the pandemic when they were disbursing assistance throughout the whole country. That is a sort of like a cash support is also a sort of safety net, but there should be more permanent solution to social safety nets in the people, those who are going below the margins, like not just once, probably every year, twice or three times. So this is sort of vulnerability and this sort of problems we're talking to.
Thank you. I think we can
this kind of thing, that my personal opinion would be that we collectively need to find out that what is it that will work for them. For even I actually didn't know that this could be a fertility issue for the woman. This is the first time that I came across this information. We didn't know. But yes, with water aids, we have worked through water aids to make this clean water and others. And it's just not about just telling the laundry list of what we have done, but we need more enablers and more facilitators for these funds to be channeled through the right way, to the right recipients, to the right cause. And these are something that our own responsibility collectively to highlight, that what is it that needs to happen. Because the organization and the corporate citizen cannot go towards individual to individual. I mean, that's the reality actually.
Climate finance is a hot topic. It's going to be I think it's going to be like a geopolitical hurricane in COP27 when we are talking about finance. And from the government level, there are social safety nets. Every budget, 1,000 crores more are being added to the social safety net. We have seen during the pandemic how people were helped and how cash was disbursed and how food was distributed. And along with the government, a lot of private sector also came and helped. That always is a very important thing.
Our focus was about reproductive health, UTI, and so on. It exposes, and this is not just in Bangladesh, it exposes the failure of the state's health infrastructure. Pandemic exposed how no country was prepared to provide, and especially for the most vulnerable. So that exposure made us think that both the political actors and the financiers and others would go and invest, but they are not. The pharmaceuticals have made obscene profit. How much of that is being rechanneled or reinvested for communities, for the health and welfare of the frontliners? You won't get any of that. Looking at our own country, if you study budget, as we do, the climate budget, there's very small line for climate budget, climate-related project. The health budget, it's 100% is never being spent. It reaches a 30-40%. It doesn't, so even within the state mechanism, there's a lot to be done in terms of health budget and spending where it is needed. And coming to the issue of women's health and gender reproductive issues and children's issues, it's deprioritized. You only mentioned about reproductive health. During because of the increase in salinity, there's a huge increase in child marriage. This is the worst form of discrimination. It is taking away the life and the dreams of girls. It is forced labor. As far as I'm concerned, this is the extreme form of exploitation. On whatever argument you might say, social argument, religious argument, protection arguments, it's nonsense. It is nothing but exploitation.
This is very much in the framing of losses and damages from climate change, which has now become a reality. And in the UN negotiations, our countries, along with many others, are fighting for finance for loss and damage. We haven't got it yet, but we are fighting for it. It's going to be a big issue in COP in a few days' time. But in the aspect of loss and damage, one of the issues that we need to do, and you are already doing this, is have good evidence of what is actually happening on the ground. And the way we frame this in the scientific discussions around loss and damage from climate change is we have two major categories in which we divide the impacts. The first category is what we call economic loss and damage. You had figures, $2 billion. In fact, my colleagues in IIT did that study to allocate who is actually paying and how much is it costing them, all right? The people are paying $2 billion a year in Bangladesh, the people who are the victims. But then there's another category which you have explored very well, which we call non-economic loss and damage. Okay, not just money, but life stories, mental health. We are working on that here in Sajida Foundation. So there's a lot of work to be done for us to gather that evidence, both the quantified evidence and the non-quantifiable but very important evidence, which we call non-economic loss and damage, is very important for us. And I would say that, in my view, although we fight for finance, the non-economic loss and damage can be much, much more important to us than just monetary costs, all right?
One of the debates in the climate financing, I see few people here who followed it, the very first project, there was a debate between whether it's a development project or it's a climate project. So they didn't fund that project because they thought these projects going to have development benefits, not the climate benefits. But the issue that they have presented here today, you can't take out your health from the climate change discussion. So I think moving forward, these debates and politics here, I think we really need to push here that we cannot take away our development agenda from the climate. So you can't just not commit to us saying that it's a development project, it's not a climate finance. And so how we can perhaps do it, what would be the mechanism in Bangladesh? There are 150 social safety nets or social protection programs in Bangladesh. These are well established, and during the disaster, Bangladesh government does distribute and has done an amazing job during the COVID and in other occasions. Can we use that existing mechanism and channel to actually mobilize the climate finance to reach these people, the women who are facing health issues and other? So one policymaker has just left, other policymaker right in the panel. So I would like to give it to you for probably further thoughts and discussion to what I have just proposed.
When I look at the way in which the world's attitude towards climate change and towards COP is changing, I don't think it's necessarily changing fast enough, but I think it is changing. And I think when we look at the evidence that is all around us every day, every year, about the way in which the climate is changing more quickly than we had expected, we see heat waves in the UK, record-breaking temperatures in the UK, terrible floods in Pakistan, floods in Bangladesh early this year, floods in Australia at the moment. Wherever you look in the world, you can see a climate that is profoundly disordered. And I think there is nothing more powerful than voices from young people in the global south to really spur the debate. And despite the fact that we are obviously living in a very disordered world where there is a massive geopolitical challenge as well as an economic challenge, particularly after the pandemic, but not only related to that, but even more underlying all of this, a climate crisis. I think there is nothing like the creativity and innovation that we hear from young people in the global south to really push all of us with any responsibility in government towards making the sort of imaginative and technical leaps that we need to make in trying to get somewhere serious in each successive round of COP. We thought we had done it in Glasgow. The world has not changed in a good way since Glasgow, but we hope that Sharm el-Sheikh will at the very least be another turn of the ratchet in trying to stop us from slipping back on these absolutely crucial underlying issues.
Thank you.